you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Um, so I'm just going to jump right in because that's what I'm best at. If you have any questions, please just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end because I can't see everybody anyway. But please do feel free to ask questions because I have lots of things I like to say. So anyway, a few years ago now, I used to walk my dog a lot on this one little section of beach here, and it's like a little mile-long section or so. And I just always would pick up trash or whatever. I've always been the type of person that if I'm walking a trail or walking the beach or whatever, I would just always have, trash in my pockets or whatever at the end of the time. And so a few years ago, I decided to do a reverse advent calendar. So an advent calendar, many of you probably know is, you open up the little doors and you get a little piece of chocolate or whatever, or, a little gift or whatever. A reverse advent calendar is rather than getting a gift every day, you give back every day. And so I decided to do a beach cleanup every day for that 24-day period. And for any day that I didn't make it, I would donate $5 to National Marine Life Center, which is a organization that helps save rescue sea turtles and seals and things. And so at the end of that 24-day period, I had missed 7 days. And so they got a whole whopping $35. But I collected so much trash, so much plastic, so much marine debris off of this tiny little section of beach that I decided to do a year-long project. And one would have thought that being, the period of Advent, I might have decided to start my project on January 1st, but I think I was a little afraid to actually get going. And so I just kind of kept putting it off, and then it wasn't quite the right day, and then it wasn't didn't fit into my little, well, I should start on a, even number or whatever. And anyway, somewhere in the middle of February or the beginning of February, it was this beautiful sunset. I was walking my dog. I found these two little army guys, and I thought to myself, today's the day. So it started on some weird random day, like February 9th or 8th or something. But that was the beginning of my project. And what I did was I decided that I would do a beach cleanup every day for a year, and I would pick up at least 3 pieces of plastic every day. That was my goal. After 9 days, I had already surpassed the amount of plastic that would have been. The math, something like 1,980 pieces of plastic or something. So after 9 days, I'd already fully surpassed that and thought to myself, oh my gosh, it kind of gave me the impetus to keep going. Being a photographer, I always kind of envisioned this as, it was always about bringing awareness and talking about the issue, not necessarily bringing awareness, keeping awareness on the problem. Everybody knows we have a plastic problem. And so I was going to do it on Instagram, and I just kind of envisioned, flat lays like this of things, different colors. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. But I was going to kind of figure it out at the end of the year and see what happened. And then within less than 2 weeks, I had so much what's called ALF, abandoned, lost, discarded fishing gear, ALDFG, because where I am off of Lewis Bay, there's a lot of shellfishing and things that go on out there. So I just found so much fishing net and ropes and lines and stuff. And so I started weaving baskets. That was the first thing that I started making, because I was like, what am I going to do with all of this trash? And then once I started making stuff, I have kind of gone crazy. And here we are, 4 years later, and I'm still just making all of this stuff, but we'll get to that. So it was pre-COVID when I started the project. So I was still traveling a lot. And so wherever I was in the country or in the world, I would continue to pick up. And I figured that at least if I picked up a piece or two, that counted towards my day. So like, for example, I took a 4-day workshop in Eastbourne in England with this wonderful artist, and it was all about mark making and using natural objects as well as rusty items to print with. And that was when I started monoprinting with plastic. Um, Everybody else was, creating all these beautiful natural things, and there's me with all this crazy plastic. But there you go, it is what it is. But so I just kind of continued wherever I was to pick up stuff. We were always going to New York City, so we'd go in and out of the city all the time. And I don't know about you all, but I didn't really want to pick up trash on New York City streets. I was like, oh, I have to eat. I'm gonna have drink a coffee or something. So I would be a little picky and choosy. And we went to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden for Cherry Blossom Festival, and I was like, here I can pick up quite happily. And where Instagram is a visual platform, I tried to always make my photos different. I have tons of people that I follow, friends around the world, who are all cleaning up beaches, cleaning up their neighborhoods, cleaning up streets, whatever. And some of them just post, here's a big bag of trash that I picked up today. Here's a big pile of trash, which is great. And it definitely gets the point across that there's so much trash. But for me, I always wanted to do things kind of different, just show things differently and use a little bit of my creative side. So, Porks with Cherry Blossoms, never going to win any prizes, but, so this was one of those photos. One of the things that I learned with going to the beach every day, specifically to clean it up, specifically to go and clean it up, was that we have so many spiders on our beaches that I had absolutely no idea about. On those warm spring days when it started to thaw out and it's, low tide and the marsh grasses are all just starting to come up above water, and you can see the sun just literally melting all the ice and everything all around. And all of a sudden, like, you look down, there are just bajillions of these little spiders. And so over the course of that year, and also still often, I often come home with little spiders because they hide in all sorts of things. This photo is an example of that, it's a piece of PVC tube that they use in shellfishing or whatever. And so again, I was trying to do something just a little different, a little interesting, and so I hold it up and it's got the jetties behind there with the sunset and the light, and I take my picture and then I put my glasses on to see if it, I can see what it is. And I'm like, like toss it down because I see the spider in there. What is that? So he was a spider who did not come home with me. But some days I'd go out and I would pick up 200 pieces of plastic or 400 pieces of plastic. I would also obviously pick up other stuff that wasn't plastic. I only counted and sorted and cleaned the plastic debris. But so I would come home with a bag full of 400 pieces of plastic. And then the next day I'd come home with a bag, 200 pieces of plastic. And in the meantime, my daughter was still at home. She was an athlete. I still have a photography studio that I was running. So it wasn't like I'd come home, get it all cleaned and sorted, and then, get on with my life. Sometimes down in my basement, there was just bags of stuff for me to get through. So the spiders would hang out down there for couple of days sometimes, and then I'd be like happily washing all this stuff, and out would pop a little spider, and I'd have to find something to cup it in, and I'd run outstairs and shoo them out the door or whatever, because I'm like that. I set the little spiders free. So again, going through a whole entire year, it was actually kind of magical to really get to study the beach so closely and study all of the different seasons. And I just had never, I live a minute from the beach. I walk all the time on the beach. I've been here for almost 30 years. I've spent a ton of time here, but I've never been in the same little area and seen, what happens in the spring and what things come up in the spring and then what replaces them in the summer. And, so it was really fascinating. But it also sometimes was very challenging, like when we get these huge blizzards, and I'd look outside and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm not, the whole world is white. I'm not going to be able to find any debris at all, ever, and plus you're a little more inland than I am, but storms when it's snowy and the wind's blowing at you and it's super painful. So this one day I went to a little marsh as opposed to the actual ocean, just the other side from the ocean. And I just stood there for a minute going, yeah, nope, snow everywhere. That's all I can see is white. And then I see this tiny little blue thing sticking out of a tree. And I'm like, what is that little blue thing? And I give it a yank and nothing happens. And I give it another little yank and out pops little Wolverine, who you could see at the bottom there. So Wolverine became my first mosaic, and he was kind of my foray into mosaics. He's also kind of he's like my little, I don't know, I don't know what he is. He's my little muse or something, I guess. I became a huge Wolverine fan, which is really funny. But this is, as you can see, the little mosaic. It's actually comic book size. I went and found a comic book that looked like him or whatever. And then again, like I said, I thought I was going to wait till the end of the year, but 6 months in, someone asked me if I would be part of a exhibit that was Our Changing World. It was all about climate change. And of course, plastic is a huge contributor to climate change, which we'll talk about in a little minute. But so I was so excited to be a part of it. And all of a sudden I had to like whip up all this stuff. And the curator wanted like installations and things. So that was really fun. So I was able to create these installations on the floor. And then I also had a bunch of photos and some of the trash. And then that year's programs were all called The Tide Falls, from a Longfellow poem, which is the tide rises and the tide falls, because, the tides are kind of, they're never changing. And yet we as humans have created such an enormous problem, and we really need to be better stewards. But so that was fun. And each show, I always create at least one new piece. This show that I did in Woodbury, Connecticut that year, I started, weaving with the ghost gear, and I did a whole ton of monoprints for this one. At the cultural center that year, my favorite part about that was I got my name on the wall, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. But I started doing some like embroidery, really ugly, really bad embroidery, because plastic is really hard to embroider with. But I'm always kind of seeing what happens. This was at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, and there, it was for the month of April, for Earth Month. And I made it more interactive, and it was geared more towards families and kids and whatever. And so I just, I did silly little, why should you pick up beach plastic? Because you have a killer sandcastle collection, and because of all the pirate booty you find and whatever, So I also talked about things like container spills. There are on average, and this was a couple of years ago, on average 4 container spills a day in our world. So everything that's in those 4 containers is in our ocean. This was last year's Preston Public Library, which is in by one of the casinos, I forget, maybe Foxwoods. And I actually have a show there this summer as well. It's just winding up. It will be there through August 25th. So anyone's heading that part of the Cape, feel free to pop into Preston Public Library. It will be there for another couple of weeks. I went back to Atlantic White Shark Conservancy this year, creating, like I said, new stuff. These are a couple of my little piping plover. I have a bird series, and they're all the sizes of the birds. So my little piping plover is, piping plover size. My tiger is not tiger size, but it is currently the year of the tiger. So even though we don't get a lot of Cape Cod tigers, I found this piece of driving back and forth to work, or riding my bike back and forth to work, whichever way. And there was this piece of orange plastic. I thought it was like a bumper off a car or something. And I drove by it and I was like, oh, I should pick it up. But it was like in this really busy part and it just would be really awkward. There was nowhere to stop my car and I couldn't quite figure it out. And after about the third day, I was like, well, it would make a really good tiger. And, maybe, and then next thing I know, I'm like pulling my car off somewhere, like dodging in and out of traffic to get this piece of plastic, which made use my bandsaw, which is actually my husband's bandsaw, but I totally take ownership over it now that, so I now am quite proficient with a bandsaw. Who knew that would be a thing? This was this year's programs, which this year's shows I called Hope is Not Passive. And this is Hope. I named her, I named my Atlantic puffin Hope. So she's kind of like the star of this year's show. And she's Atlantic white puffin size, so whatever that is about that. And the hope is not passive is, although we must have hope for the future and of our planet and for all living creatures, hope is not passive. Hope requires us to act to bring about the changes that we want to see. These are just a couple of my favorite finds. This little guy is a astronaut from the 1960s. His face is all smushed up, and I just love him. I found him in P-Town. And the fire truck in the middle is from the 50s that I found in the Hyannis. And I love finding things like the beach barrettes. When I talked about the container spills, there was a beach barrette in the 80s, a container full of sorry, not beach barrettes, a container full of child's hair barrettes, and I don't know if any of those are from the container spill, but boy, some of them look old. There's also a couple of hairpins from, back in the day when people used curlers and hairpins or whatever. I love finding stuff like that. These were a series that I did where I took kind of like the same object and had it in so many different colors. So obviously I didn't have everything, but I have straws in every color and shovels in every color. And there's a little nautilus shell that I have in every color. And since I did these photos, I now have it in like 2 or 3 more colors. And I have a duplicate of one of these, I think the blue one maybe, which is crazy to me that just, they're not all from the same beach, they're from all over, but I have all these little nautilus shells. I always say it's kind of like a naturalist collection, because it's like, I love to see things in different stages. I don't love to see things, that's the wrong way. The artist in me appreciates things in the same color, where I can do flat lays like this, or the degradation of things, or the same item over and over. I don't know if I have photos of any of those. Maybe I will. Maybe we'll see one coming up. I never remember what I put in there. So why we should stop using plastic. That's a little bottle cap that says "Wake Up." It's made from fossil fuels and contributes to climate change every step of its journey. It will be here forever. It's never going anywhere. It leaches toxins into our food and drink, causes cancer and hormone disruptions, and enters our food chain. It pollutes our waterways, our oceans, our streets, our highways, and our communities, and it kills our marine life and seabirds. And even when you're somewhere inland, like in Danbury, all roads lead to the ocean. I mean, it really is a true thing. So something that gets littered on your street. So say you're driving down 84 and someone tosses something out the window, and then it gets, washed down the highway. It gets washed into a storm drain. It gets washed into, I'm not very good with my geography over that side, but on the other side, gets washed into the Connecticut River, comes out into the, the Sound, and there it is in the ocean. It's such a simple, or it can be, blown by the wind or whatever, but it really is all of us. It's not just me and us who are living on the shore that it's a problem for. So only 9% of all plastic is recycled. So I always say, recycling's not the answer, and we should totally recycle. Anything you can recycle, anytime you can recycle, you should totally recycle. But recycling is never going to be the answer. We just create way too much trash, and if only 9% of it is recycled, and actually I saw something recently that said only 8% now is recycled, then we're always going to be creating way more than we can use in recycling. And especially with plastic, you know, recycling is way less cost effective than creating new plastic, which is very, very sad. And plastic in its very nature, it weakens every time it gets recycled, and it can't be reused for food grade and things like that, which we should all be quite grateful for, because, you know, people recycle bottles and things that they find on the beach. So we don't really want that necessarily then holding our next, whatever it is that we're going to be, you know, water bottle or whatever. But recycling is never going to be the answer. So there's this great video, and it's called 3 Seconds. You can find it on Vimeo, or I guess if you just did a Google of 3 Seconds. And in it, he says, the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, which is true. I mean, he's not saying that. This is his premise of his thing. The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. If you scale that to a number that we can kind of make sense of in our head, scale that to 46 years, then humans have been here for 4 hours, and the Industrial Revolution started less than a minute ago. And what his program is about is, in that amount of time, we've destroyed more than 50% of the world's rainforest. So then I take it and, you know, incorporate it into my little world here. And if we take those same numbers of 46 years, we've been here for 4 hours, the Industrial Revolution was a minute ago, then plastic was invented 30 seconds ago. And in that amount of time, now we put almost 14 million tons of plastic enters the ocean every single year. That's like a dump truck full every minute of every day. And if we don't make a change by 2040, that number is going to triple. It's already gone from 8 million to 12 million to 13 million to 14 million in the short period of 4 years that I've been talking about this. You know, I mean, it's just a crazy thing. So here's the sad part of my program. Well, I mean, it's all kind of sad, but hopefully, you know, hopefully not sad. 90% of all seabirds have plastic in their stomachs. Again, when I started, I did a course through the UN. It was an online course through the University of the Netherlands on marine debris. And when I took that course, it was 4 years ago, and it was this enormous course that had been translated into, I don't know, like 8 different languages or something. It was, you know, it was 30 or 40 hours worth of work. At that point, only 85% of seabirds had plastic in their stomach. And now they're saying, you know, within a decade, and I'm sure it's going to be even shorter than that, that it will be all seabirds. It's a little piping plover there made out of a sign that I found on the beach. That the sign itself was half a sign that I found on the beach. I didn't find the whole sign, or I would have hung it back up. It's one of the signs on the beach that says, please don't walk here, there's piping plovers nesting. So I thought it would make a good piping plover. 83% of endangered humpback whales between Cape Cod and Nova Scotia have scars of wounds caused by ropes or net. My little whale made on my bandsaw. 60, almost 70% of 4 species of demersal sharks were found to have ingested microplastics, and there are over 1,000 documented cases of sharks being entangled in. There's less data on shark entanglement than whale entanglement, but it's still out there happening. This is Wilma. She's a white shark. She's 4 feet long, made out of like so many insoles from like water shoes or whatever. I made her when I had my first program at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, so I donated her. So if you ever come visit the Cape and you find yourself in Chatham at the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, she hangs on the wall year round. And of course, 100% of all mermaids have found plastic tangled in their hair. Um, Plastic cutlery is now, and this again was pre-COVID, these stats. So plastic cutlery is now one of the top 5 polluters for the first time. And I bet the International Center for, the International Coastal Cleanup, which is Ocean Conservancy's annual cleanup that they do every year worldwide. It's usually the second or third weekend in September. And so they come out with these stats every like 3 or 4 years. They're slow coming. But the plastic cutlery is one of the top 5 things that they find on the beach. Is so sad to me. They found over the course of one day worldwide, all of these people, almost 2 million plastic utensils. That's like every single Cape Cod resident using plastic cutlery every day, one day for every meal, and then just tossing it on the beach, which is so sad. So the R's, my favorite R is reduce. The most environmentally friendly product you can buy is the one you don't buy. The most environmentally friendly clothing is the one you already have in your closet. We really do need to reduce our consumption of absolutely everything. Reuse when you can. If you can't reuse it, refuse it. That goes for the plastic straw, yeah, but it also goes for the plastic cutlery, water bottles. Every single time you can make the choice not to use that, you're helping make a change. It takes 250 milliliters of petroleum and 3 liters of water to make 1 liter of plastic bottled water. Or, you could turn on the tap. Refuse it. Like I said, if you can't reuse it, refuse it. It's so hard sometimes. I literally, now if we go out to eat, I always like to have a glass of water when I eat, but I literally will as I'm sitting down at the table, I'll be like, please can I have a glass of water? No straw, please, or even if I get a margarita or whatever, I'll be like, please no straw. And I can't tell you how many times they bring me the straw, and then I'll be like, and then they'll look at me and they'll see my face fall because there's a straw in a drink that I just asked them not to. And then they'll pull the straw out and they'll be like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, well, not helping. You've already used the straw. You're going to toss it out. Like, it's kind of, we need to make that the norm, that there are people who need plastic straws. There are people who have disabilities that require them to have plastic straws. They can use all of the plastic straws they want to. But for the rest of us, we need to get a little better about that. Rethink how you use our natural resources. 40% of all of our single-use plastic is in packaging. 40% of all our single-use plastic is in packaging of the stuff that we buy. It's the largest single-use plastic item. Oops, sorry. Repurpose. The fossil fuel industry intends to increase plastic production by 40% over the next decade. We need to work really hard to fight that. And like I said, please do recycle. I am a fan of recycling. It just never is going to be the only answer. It is an answer, but it is not the answer. In the US, 1,500 plastic water bottles are used every second. So here are just like a couple little things that you can do. This is my, I don't use paper towels, paper napkins, those sorts of things. I have them, I use them occasionally. I am not zero waste. I am not perfect. Whatever, but I do use tea towels, and I use tea towels for everything. And my tea towels run the gamut from brand spanky new gorgeous tea towel that I love so much and don't you dare do anything other than, try your clean dishes on it, to the one that, oh, darn it, I spilled my red wine on the floor. Let me get down there with, this tea towel is fine. But I use them for cleaning up. I use them for wiping up spills, I use them for everything. I use them for absolutely everything. And part of the reason that I have them here, I mean, part of the reason I don't use paper towels is because even if I buy the recycled paper towels, they're still packaged in plastic. So I'm still adding to the problem every time I use a paper towel. But these these tea towels that I have up. So the one that you can't see at the very beginning is from Clemson University, where my daughter will be a senior. We're driving her this weekend. I can't even believe it. So that's my Clemson tea towel. The one next to it I got from my grandmother's house, and my grandmother died in '92. The one next to it was from mine and my daughter's first trip to Iceland. The one next to it came from Darwin's house that I went to with my sister. The one next to it is from Burton on the Water, a little family vacation, and there's this fabulous little mini village there. The one next to it was from when my best friend and I went to the Alice in Wonderland shop in Oxford. And the one next to it, a very dear friend of mine brought me back from Egypt 30 years ago. And that's not to say, oh, look at me, like I go cool places or whatever. That's to say, a paper towel is never going to go, gosh, I loved it when my daughter and I were watching the Northern Lights, or man, do I miss my grandmother, or, whatever it is. But no one's ever going to be, waxing poetic about a paper towel. I can promise you that, So not only are they good for the planet, they're good for, you. They can bring happy memories to you. Same with my napkins. Some of them are from my grandmother's house again. Some of them are from my mom's house. Some of them I actually bought. A lot of them are from thrift shops. I crochet little washcloths just out of cotton, so that I'm not having to use reusable sponges or whatever. The butterfly napkins, I always tell the story that I was with my mom at a really, really, oh my gosh, such a fancy tag sale and in Washington, Connecticut. And there were the most beautiful napkins that I had ever seen. I think they probably got bought once. There was probably 20 of them. They probably got bought and used once for like a garden party or something. They were all ironed and pressed, and they were crispy, crunchy, and they were so beautiful, and they cost $12. My mother said to me, "You cannot spend $12 on napkins at a yard sale." And I was like, well, but I think I have to. And she's like, no, that you just can't. So I, spent $12 on napkins at a yard sale. And here, all these years later, my mom is not here, but my napkins are here. And I can think of her and I crack up sometimes. And they haven't been ironed since. They're all faded and whatever. But boy, I still love those napkins. And again, it's nobody's going to say that about their paper napkins either. Not everybody in the world is going to make little scrubby sponges out of chum bags that you found in the ocean that used to hold, bits of squid and dead fish for fishing. But I don't use them on my dishes, because my husband would frown on that. I think if I lived alone, I probably would use them on my dishes. But I reuse whatever I can use. If I can make something out of something, I do, like that's why the potato bags are there or whatever. You can make little scritchy bags out of them. You can make little, rather than using the little plastic produce bags, you can make little bags. And if you're not crafty or crazy like me, there's plenty of people who do those sorts of things. Buying in bulk. I buy my tea in bulk. It comes in, I love the way that it's packaged. It comes in with only paper products. The bag that it comes in itself is fully backyard compostable. And I just throw it out in my yard. It always comes with a little happy note, which I love. The bread is there because it's, yes, I know that we can't all, bake all our own bread and things like that. But when you can, or when you can have other people do it, it's not always in the budget, which is a sad part of our communities. But when it is in the budget, it's always best if, you're buying stuff without tons of packaging or whatever. I use bar soap whenever possible. I do use some liquid soap from time to time. My daughter likes the liquid soap, but I have like glass containers that I refill or whatever. So again, I buy it in bulk, refill. But I do, you know, at my studio, at my home, I pretty much always use bar soap because it comes in a little cardboard box. I try not to get the stuff that's, you know, packaged in paper or whatever. Um, when I travel, I do, sadly, that was from when I was in Cornwall in England, the photo on the left, and all this beautiful, again, you're not supposed to call marine debris beautiful, but boy, those waves and those rocks in Cornwall, everything gets like just battered around, and it's almost like sea glass, which I know I'm not supposed to like it, but I can't help it. I find it aesthetically pleasing. You know, there's one of the things I love about Instagram is there are just hashtags for absolutely everything. And like I told you, I have all these friends like all around the world. Literally, I have this great friend, and he lives in Tokyo. He's like creates all these amazing things out of plastic water bottles. He melts them, and he's created these huge sculptures and things that move and whatever. And but the hashtag thing, there is a hashtag that is called flossers in the wild for all of the flossers that people find around the stinking world. People go, really need to floss my teeth right now. Here, the Grand Canyon, perfect place to toss it. Here, the beautiful beach, yep, want to toss it here. I can't even tell you. You know, if you are on Instagram, Google flossers in the wild, you'll be horrified. Not my favorite thing if you can live without these. And I'm not saying, you know, neglect your gums and your teeth, because don't do that. But if you can find better ways than the sheer amount of plastic that goes into the creations of things like that. You know, and when we're traveling, sadly, I did not find little miniature people on the beach. If I ever did, oh my gosh, I would be the happiest camper ever. But I started a series that got no farther than 2 photos. Oh no, that's a lie. There's a third one somewhere, but I never even finished it. But I still have in my head that I would love to do this as a series with the little miniature people and some of my debris. The one on the left is, you know, a lure that I found with a lobster escape hatch. And it's called Catch of the Day. You know, the woman standing there all proudly with her big, huge fish. The little Oompa band was actually my mom's when I was cleaning out her house. I found them, which cracked me up. But I thought they needed to be on that little child's watering can. Sorry, I get distracted. But this is, you know, when you're traveling, like when I'm traveling around the States and I stay in hotels that are, you know, a lot of 3 and 4 star hotels when I'm visiting my daughter at college or whatever, like those kind of trips. You know, my money's going to pay the universities. But so when I go down for, if breakfast is included, breakfast often, especially in South Carolina where she is on a foam plate with a foam cup for your coffee and a plastic cup for your juice and a plastic silverware or cutlery or whatever. And so I have like a little bag that I bring with me when I'm traveling that has reusable silverware, you know, like I have some bamboo stuff and a little cup, a little bowl, you know, all that kind of stuff. I bring it with me. Not needed when you're traveling throughout Europe, as I found when I came downstairs with my little clangy bag, because it's all like, you know, plastic. So it makes a lot of noise, my little bag. And I had come down to breakfast the first day at my little hotel I was staying at one time. And, you know, there's like 4 forks and 5 knives and 6 different kinds of spoons and my, you know, bone china teacup and whatever. And I'm like, I thought I paid like $60 a night for this place. So I don't bring it anymore when I go traveling abroad. But when I travel in the States, I always bring it, you know, in my car. I usually have my little bamboo set. You know, just be aware. One of the other things, a huge thing when you're traveling or somewhere, you know, locally or not, is shopping local. If you're shopping local and buying local food, it's not having to travel. If you're shopping local and supporting local artists, you're not getting all the packaging and all that kind of stuff. So there's all that. In that program that I was telling you about that I got the certificates of in marine debris study, there was a program study done in Norway, and they found that a huge portion of the microplastics in our ocean come from from our tires of our cars, the tread, and from brake dust is a huge portion of it. So, you know, obviously, I mean, here in the Cape, I don't have public transportation. That's not an option for me. But, you know, probably a half a dozen times over the course, maybe a dozen times over the course of the summer when I don't have clients and I don't have, you know, I haven't got to be meeting people and I don't have to be lugging my camera, I'll ride my bike to work. You know, or I love walking places when I can. And I know it doesn't always fit into our lives. We kind of have to get out of that. It doesn't fit into our lives. So then we have to carpool, or if we can't do that, then we have to, you know, start pooling all our trips together so that we get in the car and we go do that errand, that errand, that errand, that errand, that errand, that errand, and that errand, and then come back, rather than today doing that errand, next day doing that errand. You know, things like that. We just need to rethink how we do things. You know, in the US, the average article of clothing is worn 7 times by a woman before it's discarded. And you know, that works out really well for me, who's a huge thrift shopper or consignment store shopper. But we could probably do better than that too. Holidays, you know, I'm not a big, huge fan of gift wrap and tape. I'm the queen of, how can I wrap this present today? On the left, my best friend lives in England. And so she got my presidential election ballot envelope with her president at one time. And, you know, magazines, the strings, the ribbons, I always, just if anybody ever gives me presents, I save it all. And if the wrapping paper is good, I save it all. I use it for, you know, I buy material in, again, in thrift shops, consignment shops, you know, all those kinds of places. I've been known to use old t-shirts, like old concert t-shirts and stuff to wrap presents, and which is kind of fun, way more fun than a piece of you know, wrapping paper that you're going to throw out. You know, so if everybody, if every family used just a few feet of ribbon, the cloth that would be saved could tie a bow around the earth. So, you know, next time somebody gives you a present with the fancy ribbon, save it, you know, use it on somebody else, because people, you know, my sister, her presents are so beautiful and she buys the fancy schmancy ribbon. And then, boy, I get to put it on everybody's presents, because it, you know, definitely can be used more than once. This is my portrait studio. I make my own bunting for every holiday, again, out of stuff I find. I have, you know, I decorate pretty much anything I make. If I, like I said before, if I can make it out of something else, I do. You know, so my Valentine's window is made out of old book pages. You know, those were old books of mine from the 70s. So they've got that lovely, like, patina, you know, the paper's been all acidy eaten, but they look so pretty, I think, there. You know, I reuse, when I get cards and things from people, I cut the good bits out and use them as tags. When I do buy clothing and stuff, I paint over those tags. I stick stuff on them. I'll reuse those. The Pringles cans lids I found on the beach, so I made them into little gift tags for my husband and my daughter. Obviously, that's them on there. You know, all stuff I found on the beach. The not the star, that's a piece of scrap wood that my husband had in the thing or whatever. But just like I said, anytime I can reuse stuff, just to, you know, I am known by my friends as a crazy plastic woman. I'm like, but boy, you know, none of them are like throwing all their stuff out. They don't tend to offer me the plastic water bottles. They'll be like, oh, she likes to drink out of the tap, you know, whatever. But it's good. It's good to be the person who makes people think, I think, you know. My weaving has gotten progressively better. All rope that I found on the beach, also that rope on the left was beautiful. It deserved to learn how to do a fancy sailor's knot bowl. And like I said before, when I make stuff, like I got this great book out of the library about like coastal crafts or something. And I was like, okay, well, they say to do this and to do that. I'm like, how can I do that out of things that I have, you know? So the one on the left is made out of my husband's old, I used to photograph weddings, and he used to be my assistant. So they were gross. They were not able to go to a thrift shop. Nobody wanted those shirts. But boy, they make such a cute little boat. So I use that in my studio in the window. The one on the right is a piece of fabric that I found on the beach, and then a piece of nylon, and the little flag I did color in with paint, and that's the international sign of distress, because I think our oceans are saying, help me, help me. So here's the takeaway. You know, it's going to take all of us to make a change. We need to, things you can do to help. We need to keep awareness on the issues, talk about them, share posts, be, you know, that crazy person, buy less, consume less. One of the most important things we can do is to vote for the environment every chance we get. Donate your time. If you can't donate your time, donate your money. And if you can't do either of those, then it is things like sharing, liking environmental organizations, people who are out there making a difference, spotlight them, you know. Obviously skip the straw when you can, skip anything single-use plastic. This little guy, he's my little kingfisher sized, sorry, no, kingfisher sized. And that's the other side of the boat sail. It was the way the top of his head is all like that. That was legitimately how I found it. And it was right after I had seen my first kingfisher in our neighborhood. I'd never seen a kingfisher here. And then the next day I find this piece of blue frayed fabric, and I'm like, I guess the universe wants me to make a kingfisher. And so I did. That's my little kingfisher. She's pretty cute. Her name is Frida. You know, human footprint versus wildlife footprint. We need to be more like animals. You know, we need to walk gently on the planet. So please, I'm gonna look at the chat and see what we have for questions and things, but please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as A Year of Plastic. I just completed a new little stop motion video that's on my Facebook page. It's also in my link in my bio on my Instagram page, but it's a little stop motion, all using some of the plastic that I found. So my last thing that I want to share with you is, I told you a little while ago that in the US, the average, we use an average of 1,500 plastic water bottles every single day. Since we've started, that's 5,400,000 water bottles. We can do better. So let's see what we got for questions. I'm going to put my headphones in. So, well, Lori, don't feel guilty about the fact that, you know, all we can do in this world is, when we know better, we do better. You know, we all have, you know, we've been using plastic for so long. I would like to say one company couldn't make a difference, but if that company was Coca-Cola, that company could actually make a huge difference. But that was the first comment I read. But please do not, you know, if your fridge is full of plastic water bottles, maybe think about whether perhaps you might not need them anymore. You know, it's kind of that, you know, it really is. So Yas asked, what other material did I find? I don't think I actually spat out my number. At the end of that first year, I found almost 21,000 pieces of plastic. Mostly what I find is bottle caps and foods wrappers and little cigar tips, and I don't find a ton of cigarette butts. I'm happy to tell you. Our beaches are all smoke free. Not that that means that people don't smoke on them, but just my little area where I am, it's not something I find a ton of. Um, a lot of ghost gear, a lot of, I find a lot of stuff to do with the shellfishing industry. Um, so that's a lot of what I find. I like um, most of what I find I actually can't use in any of my mosaics or any of my stuff. I find a lot of the little turtle that's on the screen right now. He's made a lot of shotgun shells. I do find a lot of shotgun shells and shotgun wads, and they obviously we don't allow hunting on the beaches, but they, like I was saying about, you know, things from where some of you are, they end up, you know, they hunt on the in the marshes and in the dunes and stuff, and then it just gets washed out or blown out to sea or whatever. So that's a lot of what I found. Yes, also asked if I'd heard about the whale that died from the plastic stuck in his stomach. Sadly, yes. That's happened more than we like to know. I actually saw a dead pilot whale when I was in Cornwall in March, and I don't know what it died from, but it had no discernible marks on the outside of it. So my head immediately goes to that it probably, you know, could possibly have died from plastic ingestion, which happens to tons of seabirds and sadly sea turtles and things too. It's an awful, awful thing. You know, we have to stop the tide of plastic from getting to the ocean, and the absolute only way to have that happen is we have to stop the production of plastic. And not all plastic is bad, but we have to cut back on the single-use plastic, and the only way that's going to happen is if it comes from the top down, which is why voting is really one of the most important things we can do. And also then cut back on your single-use, you know, blah blah, all the other stuff I said. Let's see what else we've got. Yeah, the albatross. I mean, it's an awful thing. I mean, you know, it's going to create more extinctions if we don't, you know, we're going to lose these creatures forever if we don't make a difference. And the gyres that are just floating pools of plastic are just tragically sad. It's tragically sad. Okay, let's see what else we got. Overconsumption. Yep, that's why my favorite is reduce. Haha. Instructions for scrubbies. Yes, I am so high tech, and also I take stuff, I fold it until it's about a nice size, and then I take a piece of embroidery floss and I whip stitch around outside. They're not pretty. They're not gorgeous. I ain't never selling them. That's your you can make them out of anything. You can make them out of onion bags, or like the scritchy or the potato bags, or you know, yeah, so that would work. I mean, if you're near a beach, you can probably easily find a chum bag. I have masses of them. Yeah, it is a society problem. It's a you know, it's a huge thing. There we go. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. Yeah, you know, Gina wrote about being on a beach in Fiji where people live simply, and there's so much garbage that we're ruining their spaces. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why China was like, you know, we're done recycling for you people. Like, this is not a thing anymore. But also, this is a whole nother topic, so I won't go too far into it. But now a lot of these places where the people live so simply and they have these amazing natural resources, like for example, the mangrove forests out, it's not Fiji, but it's somewhere, I can't remember exactly, somewhere that part of the world, I can't remember where I was listening about, I'm sorry. And what they're doing is they're cutting into their mangrove forests, which are carbon sinks. So the mangroves are protecting and stopping the carbon from going back up into the planet, creating more global climate change. and all those sorts of things. But so people are saying, well, don't cut the mangroves, but the people in these poor countries are saying, you've already wrecked and used up all your resources. We now are trying to just feed our people and protect our little part of the world. So it's a huge problem, but I won't go any deeper than that. But there are, you know, that is a huge issue. Yeah, developed countries sending our trash other places. It's huge. It's such a multifaceted problem. It's why I, you know, create pretty art and have shows and talk and giggle about spiders and things, because it's enormous. It's an enormous issue. But what I don't want to do is be like, we have no hope, because we have to have hope. We have to have hope. It's all we have. You know, I have a 21-year-old daughter. I want her to have an amazing, beautiful, clean world without, you know, all of these crazy issues. So we just all kind of have to figure out what we personally can do, you know, and just, you know, make less trash out there to be taken care of, you know, like that didn't make sense, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I mean, I hope that you all just kind of think about your usage, and we all go from there. And if you are anywhere near Preston, go pop into my show. Thank you all for the kind words. Thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it.